the new supervision guidelines. Now, I have talked about them before, just before they came into play on the 23rd of March, and they've been updated, obviously, to reflect the changes made by the amendments to the Act. And whilst they're actually not a specific part of the legislation amendments that came in on the 23rd of March, they are guidelines that have been issued by the Commissioner of Fair Trading, and they also came into effect on the 23rd of March this year. So, you know, over the years, we've always looked at the supervision guidelines, but there have been other guidelines as well. There have been the guidelines around, substantiation of your price, so the underquoting guidelines. There are guidelines about fraud prevention, and that's about, gaining identification of ownership or proof of ownership of properties for both your landlords and your sales and your vendors. But every licensee in charge has a duty to properly supervise their agency. So Section 32 of the Property and Stock Agents Act sets out regulations for the proper supervision of any property office. So that doesn't matter whether you're doing real estate, stock and station, or strata. Same deal, guys. So that section actually requires that you put in place, and as a licensee in charge, you put this in place for everyone within your office, that they're right at the beginning of your agency's life and on a day-to-day operational basis. So these new guidelines that were issued in February, but they came into play on the 23rd of March. You can find them on the Fair Trading website. You can ask us to send you out a copy. They're much more detailed than the previous ones were. They look at the role of the licensee in charge. They look at the requirement to have operational procedures. So the deal is still there. You still need written policies and procedures within your office. Now, you can buy them off the shelf, but they're very generic. It has to cover a 2-person office to a 52-person office to a 102-person office. These have to fit your office, wherever you fit in that size and complexity and what services you offer within your office. Obviously, it needs to monitor your trust accounting procedures. It needs to ensure your identification checks are completed for all new agency agreements for the purposes of fraud prevention. And yes, strata people, that includes you, including the people signing your strata agency agreement actually are lot owners within that strata scheme. So, smaller schemes, easier to manage. Larger schemes, this becomes really, really important. Ensure that all your communications are clear and that you're representing people in the appropriate way. Obviously, your underquoting and your representation to price is in there in terms of making sure that you are very transparent about the information that you're giving to your vendors when you're doing that. You have to have complaint handling procedures. Well, that's nothing new. None of this is new. It is just repackaged and made much clearer about what your requirements are here. The supervision of all people within your agency, that is also part of it. Looking at the roles and responsibilities of everybody within your agency. Maintaining a register of all gifts and benefits received by the persons engaged in the business. Guys, we'll cover that off big time in the compulsory CPD this year. And you've got to retain written records of all your policies and procedures in relation to the supervision of your business. So in other words, you've got to have records that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and meeting all of these requirements. So failure. Now, whilst one of the questions that Rosemary, our wonderful property management trainer, had just this morning, which is why we started talking about this morning and decided that it would be one of our topics that I would share this afternoon, was that somebody was saying, well, they're just guidelines. I don't need to follow those. Yeah, you do. So real bottom line there is, yes, you absolutely do. Failure to comply with any part of the supervision guidelines is a contravention of Section 32 of the Act and has a maximum penalty. In the case of a corporation, it's 200 points, or that's $22,000, or for individuals in any other case, it's $11,000. So you don't need to have fines that go along with not putting these policies and procedures in place. So you don't need the disciplinary action that can come from this. You don't need the fines. You don't need the grief. And you know what? If you actually comply with them, your policies and procedures will mean that your office will run more smoothly, which is what we're all looking for in terms of, doesn't matter whatever business you're in, You're looking for things to be smoother, to be less stressful, and to be really, front on and user friendly for your consumers. So, guys, encourage you to have a look at those. Encourage you to make sure that you are complying with those. In the next few months, you've got some time to actually pull that into place.